Howdy, welcome back to another Dion Talk. In today's video, I'm going to cover 6 actionable steps that you could take to get started into real estate and on your path to financial independence. If you're anything like me, Rich Dad Poor Dad was probably the book that gave you the mental shift to start looking at the differences between assets and liabilities. It could have been one of the other books, one of the classics like Think and Grow Rich, Richest Man in Babylon, but those books don't really give you a to-do list, like a do these things. What I'm going to go over today, you don't have to do them in the exact same order that I'm going to talk about them, but this is the way it really worked best for me. At the end of today's video, I'm going to cover why my strategy works for me, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be what you're expecting. The first thing that you really want to focus on is your credit score. This is probably the easiest thing to work on because it helps you whether you're going to get into real estate or not. So it's something we should all be focusing on anyway. To get the best rates on a mortgage generally requires a 740 or higher credit score. You can get mortgages with a lower score, but everything that you can do to get it closer to that 740 or higher is going to help you get better rates now and rates on refinances down the road. And there are a lot of easy things that you can do to improve your credit score. I recommend going to a channel like Minority Mindset with Jaspreet Singh and searching for his videos on improving your credit score. Something simple that I took away from one of his videos was credit utilization. I had a credit card that had a $5,000 limit on it. I was spending about $1,000 a month, pretty much just using it for the cash back, paying it off every month, so I never carried a balance. But that was using 20% of the card. And to have the least impact on your credit score, you want to be using less than 10% of your credit utilization. So I called the credit card company and asked for the card's upper limit to be raised, and it went up to $11,000. I didn't start spending any more money. I didn't use any more of that available credit. I kept my spending to about $1,000 a month, which put me below the 10%, and it raised my credit score almost 20 points. And there's a lot of simple things like that that you can do to help with your credit score. The second thing that we're going to cover today is kind of ironic that it's not at the end. You're going to do it almost at the beginning, is figuring out your end goals. You need to know where you want to end up. Other words, you're going to flounder because you're going to have too many subjects to study. There are very different strategies, and almost every step along the way is different. If are you going to flip houses? Are you going to wholesale houses? Are you going to use the BRRRR method, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat? Are you going to do buy and hold? Are you going to invest in residential properties, 4 units or less? Are you going to invest in commercial multifamily properties? Until you figure out what those end steps are going to be, you can't really determine the first steps after the 6 that we're going to take today. Each one of those has a different strategy, and I'm going to make a video on almost every single one of those topics, but not today. Which means today we're going to stay focused on just these 6 steps. Once you've narrowed down your niche or the type of investing that you want to do, the third thing I'm going to cover is the importance of determining if you want to invest close to where you are or at a distance. Those are 2 very different types of investing. Both have their benefits, both have their drawbacks. If you invest only locally, you're tied to one market. And if there's not a lot of economic drivers and big companies move away or a base shuts down or a port shuts down, your entire portfolio can be impacted. If you're investing at a distance, how do you pick the market? Do you have an advantage? Did you grow up there? Do you know the neighborhoods? Is there a reason why you know that's a good place to invest? Is the population growing? Have you gone to U-Haul's website and checked out their trends on where their trucks are going? For instance, myself, I invest locally. I self-manage currently. That's going to be changing soon. All 14 of my units are within an hour's drive of my house, but I try to make sure that they're all at least 10 miles apart. And I have specific criteria that helps me limit turnover. It helps me make sure I have more than one source of tenants. I'm going to also be making a video about that. But if you're in a really high cost of living area, maybe it doesn't make sense, or you can't find cash flowing properties as easily in Seattle or Los Angeles that I can. And my units are all between Tacoma and Olympia and Washington. Once you have determined if you're going to invest locally or at a distance, we get to the fourth thing that I want to cover today, which is finding a lender. If you don't know how much you can borrow and what interest rate you're going to get, it's going to be really hard to look at properties because there are a lot of them out there, and a lot of them aren't going to work. 99% of the ones that you look at are probably not going to cash flow or meet your other criteria. Finding out what that upper limit of how much you can borrow kind of lets you know to look for everything less than that. When you first start shopping around for a lender, you want to start working on getting a letter of pre-qualification. So if you've determined that you're going to invest locally, you know the counties that you're going to invest in. If you're at a distance, you go to those counties and you find a lender that's located there. There are probably nationwide lenders that you can use too. My best luck has been finding somebody who lives in the area, or at least in the state that I'm investing. All of my investing so far has been done in Washington State, but I'm starting to look for properties in Arizona. I've heard a few people in the BiggerPockets forums writing about how they like to use a local credit union or a broker because they're always available. And one of my favorite agents that I've worked with, or not agents, one of my favorite lenders that I've worked with works for Wells Fargo, and she texts or emails 24 hours a day. On a Saturday, she'll get me a letter of pre-qualification back for a property within 10 minutes. So a lot of my loans went through Wells Fargo until Fairway Mortgage was able to finally beat some rates. When you're picking a lender, you are going to take a hit to your credit. That first inquiry will affect you by a few points. When you do that, you get a grace period. From my research, I found about 14 days, where in 14 days, more inquiries in that same 14-day period don't have another impact to your credit score. So that's when you want to shop around. One thing that I do with lenders that you might want to do too is I treat them like a contractor. You don't call a contractor and say, I need you to do this project. How much do you charge? Great, please do that. You call 3 or 4 contractors and you get quotes and estimates and ask for advice and see the ones that seem like they're the easiest ones to work with. I do the same thing with lenders. If they're not responsive, or if they have set hours of the day that they want to work, only 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, then that's not going to work with me. And when I do get a rate, I don't do this early on. When I first get the rate, I just use that rate because I know what my limit is so I could start looking for properties. Once I find a deal and I get it under contract, I will then go to lenders and take in writing from each lender to the other lenders what Wells Fargo is offering, what Guild Mortgage is offering, what a local credit union is offering. I will let the people working at those lending agencies see what their competition is offering for rates, for closing costs, for buying down the rate fees. You'd be surprised what people are willing to do to beat the competition. And one thing that one of my lenders educated me on is they can't go to their manager and say, this person has a 4% rate, I'd really like to give them a 3.7. But if you give your agent a loan offer from another lender at 3.7, then they have something in writing they can take to their underwriters and say, this is a competitor's rate, I would like to beat it so we can keep the business. That's worked for me almost every single time. The first time that Wells Fargo was beaten by Fairway was recently when I did some refinances. They were almost 0.5% lower. They were my first mortgages that were done with a different lender. One of the things that I found really important when working with a lender is them being prompt. When I want to make an offer on a property in my market, I want to have a letter of pre-qualification as fast as possible to send with my offer. And that usually means I would like an answer back within 10 to 20 minutes. And if a lender isn't able to do that, then I'm not going to be working with them for very long. But there's a lot of lenders that understand this, and the ones I'm working with have been really fast. So if you're willing to call 3 contractors to get quotes on a $5,000 project, it doesn't make sense to not talk to at least 3 lenders on a 30-year commitment for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 5th actionable step that we're going to talk about today is finding that real estate agent. And for me, I had to talk to at least 20 over the period of a year before I found 3 that I was willing to work with. And if you're a real estate agent, I completely understand that if you want a client, you want to sign an exclusivity letter so that that client doesn't make you do a bunch of work and then go work with another agent and give them the commission. I completely understand that, but this is coming from the investor's perspective. My personal setup is that I talk to 3 agents. They're all aware of each other. They know that I have auto searches set up. I don't make them do hardly anything unless I'm really looking at a deal to make an offer. So they're not driving me to properties every day. I have them set up auto searches. I give all 3 the exact same criteria, and somehow, the way the MLS is set up, each one of them finds me completely different deals. I've only had one time in 10 years where 2 agents sent me the same deal within a 3-day period. So that's never really been an issue. But I give them the same criteria, they send me their auto searches, and then I filter through them. And I want my auto searches to be more broad than what my criteria is so that I can determine what I want to filter out, because it's really hard to translate what I want into clear context for an agent to understand how to set up the search. But once they set up the search and I start getting things that I don't like personally, I don't like to buy short sales. So then I call the agent back and I say, hey, let's remove short sales. I usually have my search set up for about $100,000 above what my limit is that I can buy. Because if you found a property that's been on the market for 180 days, you might be able to make a lower offer. In my market, in Washington, around Tacoma, it seems like most properties that I'm interested on are on the MLS for about 20 minutes. Usually within 24 hours, there's 10 to 20, maybe even more offers on each property, usually $20,000, $30,000 above asking price, waiving contingencies. So my goal, whenever I find a place that I like and the numbers work, is to get my offer in fast. I want my letter of pre-qualification from the lender quickly. I want the agent to make the offer quickly. And depending on your market, it may not matter. I'm looking in Arizona and I'm finding places that have been on the market for over 100 days. In my state here in Washington that I'm currently investing in, to see something on the market longer than 3 days is weird. So today, getting to that last thing that we're going to talk about, that sixth actionable step that you can take, is to filter through deals. The more you look at, the more your brain will be trained to notice things quickly. And in the beginning, I would look at a property for 20 minutes. I would Google Earth it. I would street view it. I would try to read every note. I would send my agents questions, and it could have been eliminated in less than 10 seconds by seeing something that I know now to pass on. I have developed very specific criteria, and the more specific your criteria is, the easier it is to recognize a good deal when it pops up. Like I said earlier, I have criteria that makes me have very low turnover. Actually, after my first 2 tenants that were a nightmare, since then, and I got my systems in place, I've only had 1 tenant turnover, and that was because that person inherited a house. So my first criteria that I want to make sure is in the properties I'm looking at is the one to limit tenant turnover. The second thing I look for is to make sure that there is more than one economic driver close to that property so that I have more than one source of tenants, and to make sure that the property's not really close to my other property so that I'm not sharing the same tenant pool. The more deals that you filter through, the faster you get, the easier it gets. So to wrap up, let's quickly go through the 6 actionable steps. The first thing you're going to do is work on your credit score. You're going to determine your end goals. You're going to figure out if you're going to invest locally or at a distance. You're going to find a lender. Or 3, you're going to interview an agent, or a lot more. And 6, you are going to filter through deals, as many as you can. Run the numbers. At the beginning of the video, I said that I was going to tell you the secret that makes my strategy work for me. It works for me because, and I can't stress this enough, I am incredibly lazy. I am probably the laziest person I have ever met in my entire life. One of the reasons why I joined the Marine Corps was because my family runs tree services. My dad had a tree service. Both my brothers have tree services. One shut his down when he retired with his rental properties. But I joined the Marine Corps because the work in the Marines was a lot easier than working with trees with my family. And I really want investing in real estate to make it so that I don't have to work. I get to determine if I have to get out of bed or not because I have passive income coming in. But there's so many different ways to invest in real estate that not all of them work for me because of the lazy. I look at flipping and wholesaling as those are episodical. They're like a job. You have to keep doing that because when you stop, the money stops coming in. And flipping is finding a deal that has a big enough gap between purchase price and what you can sell it at. Flipping is probably too much like an actual job to me because you have to find a deal at the right price. You have to put the sweat equity or hire contractors to put enough increased value in the property to sell it. Looking at wholesaling, it's the same. You have to find a really good deal, probably develop off-market strategies, build a buyer's list. It's all these steps to making it a job. And then the BRRRR strategy, buying it, rehabbing it, which is a bunch of work, renting it out, which I'm okay with, that's easy. Refinancing, so that means using hard money or your own money or getting money from one source and then refinancing into a loan to pull your money out so that you can repeat the process, which would give you more properties faster than what I have, but I think it gives you a bit slimmer margins. So it would take more tenants to manage than with my strategy. I was able to reach financial freedom with just 7 units. And at 14 units now, my take-home pay is over twice what I was making as a police officer. My strategy works for me because I'm super lazy and I have to live somewhere. So when I moved from an apartment into a duplex and lowered my housing costs from $1,500 a month down to $300 a month, I was able to save $1,200 a month extra towards the savings rate to buy the next property without having to do anything. Even though I do move when I house hack, I've house hacked twice with my portfolio so far, I call 2 guys in a truck and I spend about $300. I go to work, when I come home, all my stuff is at the new place. It works because I'm lazy. And being lazy is a powerful motivator that most people don't understand. If you want to find the easiest way to do something, find a lazy person and we will show you how to get it done with the least amount of work. I hope I made it worth your time logging in today. If you like this video, if you think you got anything out of it, please hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with a friend so hopefully they can learn from this. Thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.